Coming up on the Week 6 post-game show, 2 weeks left until the playoffs, but boy, did it feel like the playoffs in Week 6. A double overtime game. We have a lot to talk about with that one. And really 4 close games. We know you all listen. We have more picks coming up this week because you made sure you knew who we picked in Week 6 in that loaded slate of games. So, we're going to break down Week 6, preview Week 7, do some playoff stuff because we're kind of at that point where now we can see, okay, if this team wins and this team loses, or if this team wins out, they can get to this seed. And so some bracketology stuff going on as well. With 2 games left in the regular season, then every team will make the playoffs. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Week 6 had some awesome games. There's things from every game we can take, but the big game we had a feeling going in. Lob City and the Skyhawks, a double overtime game. We're going to break down kind of all the different parts of that because a close game throughout, double overtime says all you need. Another big shot by Lob City. They almost sneak another one out, but it is the Skyhawks getting to 6-0. So all of that and Week 7 picks coming up. This episode's presented by Initial Response Restoration. They haven't been at a game recently, so I'm kind of calling them out here. They're still the sponsor. It's great. We love them, but listen, it's almost playoff time. We need some love in the stands again. 24/7 emergency services for water, fire, storm, and mold damages. Contact Initial Response Restoration today. We restore, you recover. Week 6, I don't even know where to start, but coming up on the show, a really good show, and then like I said, Week 7 picks, so stick around for that. But let's start the show. Yeah. This is the Legacy League. Tell me where your legacy be. Yeah. Week 6, I don't want to waste any time. Lob City and the Skyhawks. That we teased it earlier in the year. This game kind of was like a 6 out of 10 on the playoff scale. That was an 11 out of 10. That was like semifinals transformed into Week 6. And it wasn't the semifinals, but we're going to look at some standings and stuff, and it could be how the playoffs fall, and we could get Skyhawks and Lob City again in the semifinals if some things shake out that way. Obviously, a lot of teams have a lot to say about that, but let's get to Week 6, the Week 6 post-game show. I'm Joey, Jess, and Aidan standing by, and we love it, just while we still have everyone listening. We love that everyone listens and brings it up to us, so let's keep that going, especially at Week 7, which is another great night of games and some rematches, some teams playing each other for the second time, which is always fun, that second time around. So nicely, obviously. Say all the nice things to me and all the bad stuff to Jess. She can take it. It's all good. All the hate when she makes the wrong pick. It's okay. It's what happens when you're new. But, guys, double overtime. It's always been the rule, and we'll kind of get more into the game in a second, but we didn't really have any double overtime games in the regular season through the first 7 or 8, I think it was 8 Legacy Leagues years. And it really started in Massachusetts about a year ago. They had like 2 double overtime games where it ends on the first point. One of the first in Rhode Island, if not the first, because in the playoffs we just go 2 minutes forever when a team is going to get eliminated. But in the regular season, double overtime is the first point, and boy, Gian told me today he hated the rule, obviously semi-joking because he understands the concept, but it was a double overtime win for the Skyhawks. A lot to talk about, 70-69 in that one. And let me just also start off with, I was walking around during the end of that game. The Road Dogs were there watching, the Halfway Crooks were getting ready to go, and I'm pretty sure it was Ethan. So Ethan or Lyons, they were both over there like, oh, yep, this is... it's a race to 70, and they were kind of using my line. And that's what we had because of how much the game slowed down between these two teams. So I'll throw some stats in here or there, but I kind of want to go in order, and we're going to have you guys both jump in at different points of the game, and then you can make some, overarching comments at the end. But we're going to pick it up because a super close game throughout, and I don't think any team led by double digits. I tried to kind of go back through the stream, and it was a single-digit game throughout. It might have been like no more than 8 points, but we were missing a chunk of the stream there, and I'm glad we caught that because we were able to get the end of the game on YouTube. So go back and watch if you can. But tied at 58 with 3:24 to go, and then it was still tied at 58 with 109 left. And so that was actually the last lead at that point. That was the last lead the Skyhawks had in regulation with 3:24 left. And so, the last 3 minutes, the Skyhawks didn't have a lead and still get it to that first overtime. Almar hit a 3, which gave Lob City a 3-point lead. Jalen Benson, who had a great game, let me give you his stat line, because looking back, 28 for him, 6 rebounds, 2 steals. I bet you that's probably more like 4 or 5, and so we'll take care of that because I can picture him stealing a couple in the overtime alone. That was his, coming out party, and, the way that team is kind of figuring out how everyone plays is huge, but a lot of huge plays by him down the stretch. He got a layup in regulation to cut the lead to 1. He kind of made the steal and a big play right after that with the Skyhawks down by 1 and got fouled. So he split some free throws, and so we're tied again at 61. We're going to finish regulation and we'll go to Jess, but tied at 61 with 35 seconds left. Almar drives and Omar gets him with a charge. And so, Noah had one earlier, his vintage kind of one charge a game that he takes. And Omar Rahman got one there, a huge play in a tied game. Skyhawks come down. They actually run the clock down. So from 35 seconds-ish to the last shot of what they wanted it to be. Omar ends up driving. Almar almost takes the charge back. No call. They kind of let it go. Hachi comes away with the ball, drives down the floor, has to kind of do a spinning shot because he loses it. And so actually no one really gets a shot up after that last 30 seconds at the end of regulation. But just looking at that fourth quarter and kind of how we got to that point starting overtime, both teams had a lead. What was the key to get to overtime? Because at that point you're like, this thing can go either way, and nobody even shot free throws. But what was the key to get it to the overtime in this Lob City Skyhawks game?
Yeah, it was one of those games where you really couldn't tell where it was going to go. It was really refreshing to see Lob City with a full team, because then you honestly, coming into it, me and Aidan were like, wow, we should not have bet against Lob City. They really got a good shot here because the Skyhawks have a full team, as we've talked about in the past. But I feel like the thing that really got them ahead in the lead was because of their team chemistry, and they were able to keep it going. Like I said, Lob City, it was good to have Gian back. I know he was getting a feel of the court while he's getting back from his injury. But, and then every time they were down, Cody Crawford getting the ball, getting those threes, Elmore getting into the basket. So both teams, and Noah James just dominating on his team. Both teams had those key players and those key plays that as soon as one team got a point, the other team was able to just come back and, slap it right in their face. So it was not an easy win, and honestly, not a fun way to win, as it was, bittersweet, and not a fun way to lose, as, 1 point and it being a foul also at the end. So that was a tough one to end that way, but one of the most entertaining games of the season so far.
And she's jumping ahead, so we're going to get to the overtime, which is great. Speaking of Gian, because you brought it up, yeah, that was, and Gian admitted it to me, and I asked him if he wanted to say anything, and all he wanted to say is it's personal with the interns now, because he has to kind of prove, to some of the people who haven't seen him play. That was probably a 5. Like a 5.5 on the Gian scale, and there was flashes, right? Some of the highlights we have, the one-handed tip slam out of nowhere, that was the aged version of Gian because he is hurt. That's what he's gonna look like in 10 years playing in legacy leagues, right? Kind of cruising around. He's normally much more physical, and so that was kind of one of the things he said, right? Him getting back in the swing, and you talked about chemistry, adding him back into this mix with a full team for Lob City. They looked pretty good, and that was kind of what they were talking about after the game. For everything, considered, and nobody wants to lose, and they're not making excuses, but for kind of having all these pieces and playing a team like the Skyhawks, not bad. And they feel like they can build on that. We talked about Jalen Benson, Noah James with only 14, and still impacted the game, also 11 rebounds. Dom Ennis with 11. And for Lob City, Almar Sabat led the way with 21. A lot more balance here. Cody Crawford with 19. Hachi Amini with 14, and Gian with 10. 2 of 5 from 3. It felt like more than that, as my dog agrees. But Aidan, you can go anywhere with this one and Lob City and what you think.
Yeah, so like Jess said, as soon as they walked in the door, I was like, you never bet against Lob City, and I made the one mistake I did last week. Turned out well, but that was the first time we've seen their whole team the entire season. And like you just said, this is not the Gian that I'm used to see play. I missed 1 year. I didn't see him play. But, again, he's not like this. And like you said, you saw glimpses. It is an ankle injury, so it is tough to jump around and obviously run. And, with the team as physical as the Skyhawks, you really can't do a lot. But what I noticed from Lob City in the beginning of the game, is that they were on the court and it felt like they were disrupting the Skyhawks' pace and their flow. The Skyhawks didn't look flustered, but they looked out of sorts. So it was kind of going through that. And like you said, they didn't have many lead changes. I think the biggest lead was 8 or 9, like you said. But it was to the point where they were scoring at each other at the same exact time, or one team would go on a run, then they'd go cold, and then the Skyhawks or Lob City, whoever it was, they'd come back. So it'd be a 6-point game, Lob's up by 6, they miss the next 4 shots, Skyhawks take it back up, and they tie it. It was, like you said, it was the Jalen Benson coming out party. I know I called him an X Factor. I think he's their second best player. Now, it was a rougher game for Omar because he was just kind of, oh, no, wait, whoa, they're laughing at me.
No,
Okay,
the reason is, no, we're cutting in because now you need to do it. If he's their second best player, and he's played very well, so I agree with that. The reason I'm laughing is because, yeah, go ahead. So who is he jumping? Go ahead.
They're going to hate me for this. I think he's overtaking Omar. You know, we've seen great glimpses of Omar, and, you know, he can drive to the basket. It was a rougher night for him. But in terms of just playing-wise, the last 2 games from Jalen Benson have been fantastic. Now, I know they listen. They're gonna say something. It happens. But those 3, like an off game from Noah, too. And what I noticed, too, is that Noah wasn't in during a lot of the ending crunch time moments. And I don't know what that was about. Maybe it was because he only shot 50% from the field. Usually he's a little better. But it was more kind of, I think, defensive purposes and just energy and the way that unit was playing. So I did notice that. And the fact that the Skyhawks were able to complete that without Noah is also very good, too. Because you realize, if he's out or we need to sub him out for defensive purposes or whatever the reason was he was out, you know that the rest of your team can carry you. And that's exactly what the Skyhawks did.
Yeah, well, let's kind of get to that overtime. And I know I left everybody hanging with what happened the rest of the game. But it was definitely in stages, and we talked about some of those runs. We're going to come back to some of the stats I just saw in a second. That's why I made the face of how kind of this game might be different next time for a ton of different factors, right? But we get to that overtime, and right off the tip, and this is important and kind of what I was thinking about watching this back, right off the tip in overtime, the Skyhawks get an easy one. They win the tip because they have Dom, and that's, part of the advantage. They tip it, pass it ahead, and they get a layup. So they go up by 2, instantly in overtime. And in a 2-minute overtime, my thinking is like 6 points usually kind of puts you in a really good spot to at least have a chance to win it at the end of, just because of the number of possessions, right? If you can score 6 points, they're probably going to have to follow you at some point. So that's 2 right away. Lob City comes down, and Almar throws a skip pass that is stolen by Jalen Benson, trying to get it to Gian in the corner, foreshadowing. We'll come back to that. And he goes down and dunks it. So now it's like, Lob City hasn't even got a shot up in the overtime, and it's Skyhawks with their first lead since 3.5 minutes to go in regulation. They're up by 4 in the overtime, and I have flashbacks, so not to go sidetracked for a second, but I've been up 4 in overtime in a finals game and lost. So it's doable, and it's painful, but you start looking around like, all right, just the number of possessions here, like, spotting us 4 points like that, it's a huge advantage in an overtime. Nuri ends up driving, and this is kind of the block call where things get a little crazy. I think it was clean up top. I think some body down low is fair, but they call a foul on that block. And then Omar gets, into it, and it's a very intense game and gets a technical. One of the most tame technicals I've seen in a while, but definitely a technical. But just like, I was at the other end of the court, kind of like, really? All right, they called it a tech? I mean, maybe there was some magic words said, but it wasn't even that. But now, Lob City down 4 goes from getting fouled to now getting 4 free throws and the ball in overtime. So a huge swing, and it happens. Nuri splits the free throws. Almar steps up and makes both of the technical free throws to cut it to 1, and Lob City's now inbounding. So a huge, huge change and kind of erasing that 4-point edge that they had. Gian actually misses a 3 from the top of the key. Jalen drives back down and does a very nice layup over Nuri, I'm pretty sure, like a high layup to get the Skyhawks back up by 3. So again, Jalen Benson with the steal. He might have been the one to get that first dunk off the jump, but definitely had the second dunk to put him up by 4 and another layup. So huge plays from him in the overtime. Shout out again. Lob gets trapped. They call their only timeout of the overtime with 22 seconds left. And on the inbounds, a couple questionable stuff that we're going to bring up here, but on the inbounds, they're playing like Almar boxes his guy out to half court. I mean, the basket's the other way. That's just me, but hey, kind of gets a little sneaky play and is able to get some momentum and dunks it right over Omar to cut it to 1. Lob doesn't foul. The Skyhawks get another a run out and get an easy alley-oop instead of being fouled with like 14 seconds left to put them back up by 3. And then the clip that we can put over this, and that we'll be posting, but Almar drives and kicks to Gian in the corner for one of his threes to tie it in the overtime with 6 seconds left, so a huge shot. We knew it was in there. He missed some throughout the game, and he comes up big there. And then the last kind of possession, no timeout for the Skyhawks either. So interesting there, kind of thinking back that they didn't take the timeout, advance it with about 5 or 6 seconds left and kind of set something up, maybe get Noah back in. Great point that he was out. Jalen Benson, who was having a great game, misses a deep 3, and we go to double overtime. So we'll go back to Jess, then I'll kind of finish up the double overtime. We'll go back to Aidan, and we'll wrap this up. But Jess, kind of that overtime, a long 2 minutes. I don't even know how many points were scored, but I know we have it in our stats. 8-7, which isn't right, because then how did we get to double overtime? So we'll fix that. So probably 8-8. Yeah, it's all good. It's all right, 8-8. But both teams scored. In overtime a good amount, Jess. Go anywhere you'd like with that, but like a ton of huge plays. Gion's 3, Skyhawks get a steal, but again, some questionable stuff there as well in that overtime.
No, yeah, you brought up a lot of good points about all the main plays that were made, but I feel like the technical foul that was really necessary for Lob City because it gave them those additional baskets like you were saying, and then after that I feel like it was way easier for them to catch up and make points. I feel like without that they would have been a little bit more behind, so they were able to get in there and do that. I know everyone was just going back and forth making all these, it was just a very stressful overtime to watch, and them tying it up at the end for a double OT. They said, I'm excited. I knew it was in him. I'm excited to see Mr. 90 points in a game, I heard. So, see where that goes.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, and so even just getting to double overtime quickly. So now it's first point, right? And in the regular season, it could be a free throw. It could be, a made basket, which is obviously the dream, and you kind of walk off on a make just to keep the night moving along. Again, in the playoffs, we do 2 minutes forever, which is definitely more fair. But I foreshadowed how the Skyhawks just, to start the first overtime, got the jump ball, were able to easily control it, one pass for a dunk, almost like a drill. Tip it to me, I'm going to throw it ahead, cut, we're getting a dunk. Knowing that, and knowing how the game ends, it's obviously easier to do this when you're watching the game back. Lob City had 2 guys on their offensive end of half court for that jump ball. So if you think ahead, all right, they just won the other jump ball. They probably won the opening tip as well. Just kind of going out on a limb. We should probably have all 3 guys back. It's next point. If, they're kind of let them get the ball almost, but not get a run out, right? So I didn't like Lob City's chances now thinking back with that setup, just because it was probably going to be a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2 3 seconds from now after they throw the ball up, right? We didn't even get there, so who knows? But I was able to pause it and be not a fan of that setup. We didn't even get to that point because they call a foul on the jump ball, which I think it definitely was. It stinks that, and I was able to watch the clip 9 times, so good for the ref for kind of calling what he saw in real time once, seeing it once. It stinks for the game to kind of end this way, but they call a foul on the jump ball, and it's Skyhawks getting free throws, and that's how it ends. They make the first free throw, and it's funny, I was talking about if you want to foul somebody, foul him. He missed 2 free throws, I think, earlier in the game, and now it's Dom Ennis going to the line with a chance to win it and sinks the first. So clutch for him to make it, but Aidan, it kind of was a stinky way to end the game, after all this, a great 3-pointer to force double overtime, plays both ways, defensive plays, blocks, and it's going to end on a free throw. So hopefully we get to see this game again, and they can go in 9 overtimes. I'm in. We can sign up for that right now in the semis. It's a good deal by me. Aidan, even just talking about overtime and double overtime, how did the Skyhawks hold on and grind this one out?
I think it's just they didn't change the way they played their game. Like I said earlier, it felt like Lob City disrupted them in the first quarter, but ever since then they continued to play, and they were playing with composure. Like we talked about, Noah was out for a good portion of crunch time, and in retrospect, that was the correct decision. But sitting on the bench, I was like, it's a little interesting. But I think they were just able to make the correct plays, and this was their 6th victory in a row. They've the only other team. Well, they beat you guys, unfortunately. But the only other like top team that they have played is the Road Dogs, and they beat the Road Dogs. It was another close game. So I think with these two, like the Road Dogs, they only beat by 9, but this Lob City beating them by 1. So two super close games against two top teams, the two teams that have won titles in the league. I think they have kind of stamped their way into being a finals pick, or at least being able to make a run into the finals, given there should be the 1 seed unless anything changes. I don't think that'll change depending on who loses. But going into the 1 seed with such a dominant team and being able to have a whole bench, they were subbing guys in and out, but this win is their battle-tested win, and I think this kind of knocks them above some other teams in playoff contention.
Yeah, Coach Joey came out, and I feel bad kind of thinking back. I was like, no, what are you doing? Like, why are you sitting next to me over here? But not my team, so hey. And when you win, it all works out, right? So they made the right decision, and they got the win. That's the ultimate thing. Not to put the Halfway Crooks on the same level with the Road Dogs of past and obviously Lob City every season, it seems like. But talking about the Skyhawks matchup, it was a tied game with 2 to go when the Skyhawks and Crooks played, I believe, in week 3. And so, yes, it was a 9-point game, but that was a back and forth game throughout as well. And we'll get to see that again in week 7. So very excited for that matchup again. Just to finish here, because we've done a lot on this game, but I think it was worth it. The one stat that I saw quickly, because we kind of went over the scores, the field goal percentage is about the same. I mean, the Skyhawks really didn't shoot it well from 3, and Cody Crawford, was 4 of 10, and it felt like he was hitting. It was a little better than that, even, especially in that first half. And I heard him talking about he wishes he was a little more aggressive because of how well he shot it early, and I think that's a good thing to think about after the game. I think that's correct. The one thing that stands out: 41 to 29 rebounds for the Skyhawks, and so that kind of makes sense. But 19 offensive rebounds to 3. Right? And so despite having that huge edge, which means, 16 more possessions in theory than Lob City had because you had that many more offensive rebounds, for it to still go into double overtime is kind of what we talked about earlier with that Lob City kind of thinking of, this didn't go our way. We got some new guys in here. We had a full team for once, and we still lost by 1, right? So kind of taking that perspective of it, there's some stats in there. I don't even know about the turnovers, but everything else is pretty much even. The rebounding thing is what really stood out to me. Free throws were close enough, attempt-wise. Lob City made more threes, and I think that kind of helped them overcome that offensive rebounding thing, and this is kind of where we'll end it. If these teams play again, it's going to be even a slower pace. I would imagine now the teams are kind of a little more familiar with each other. The rebounds are going to be even more important. And I can't imagine, Lob City gets killed like that again on the offensive glass if that's a focus for them coming in, where they're a little more comfortable, a little more familiar with the opponent and with themselves. So just to look ahead quickly, and we'll keep it moving, Lob City and the Road Dogs get a rematch, and that's our next game. We're going to talk about how the Road Dogs fell in week 6, and the Skyhawks get the Halfway Crooks again like we talked about. Yeah. All right. That's 25 minutes on one game. I love it. All right, we'll keep it moving, and we're going to do some one-word game because we're going to have to make up some time. But it is the Halfway Crooks in the battle of one-loss teams getting the win in week 6. I don't know where the score is. 102 to 73, the high-scoring team actually in the league through 6 weeks. Of course, I was looking at some stats after a win like that. And they defeat the Road Dogs. A close game throughout, another one of those, a little deceiving. Because of the fourth quarter being a 35-21 advantage for the Halfway Crooks. So a close game, a 10-ish kind of point game, and the Road Dogs made a little run. The Halfway Crooks would respond, but especially in the second half, it was closer to a 10 or a 15-point game for most of the second half. The Halfway Crooks led by Nick Lemoyne's 30 and 10, Kavai Simpson with 25, David DePina with 16, and O'Rain with 3 threes and 11 points. Ethan Austin with 20 and 9, Karan Bostic with 4 threes, and they were some big ones that the Road Dogs needed at some points there to kind of get that run going. 18 for him, and Joe Secator with 16 and 4. Aidan can go first this time. You've seen these teams a couple times. What was the difference for the halfway crooks? I mean, they kind of built a lead and never looked back, but how'd they do it?
Energy. You guys have, Nick's a burst full of energy every time. He's gonna run through the whole court. But I think what I noticed with the Road Dogs is, yeah, they were down some pieces the last 2 weeks, but there was no same thing. There wasn't much energy. There wasn't much communication like I'm used to seeing from the Road Dogs. And I think maybe it's because Kareem Cooper is hurt, which is unfortunate. He was always going to be there. I was watching the live stream. He was in the live stream cheering on his team. He's always in there. But again, not having him or even Shaq Ardrey, they're vocal leaders of this team. And it just seemed like the energy and the way they were composing themselves, it was really off because last week they wanted to, continue the way they were doing. They only had 5 guys. They still won. Obviously, Joe went off. But you want to continue that and keep playing, and they had more players, but it looked like things weren't going well. Like you said, the fourth quarter blew out of proportion because it was just kind of crooks the whole time. But it was like a 10, 15-point game throughout the whole quarter, or the whole game, I should say, sorry. And it was more or less the Road Dogs they were just missing shots, unfortunately. You guys shot 65% from the field, and then when you're shooting above 50% from the field, you're going to have a great game. And it was just, I don't want to say it was mismatches, but it was kind of, once somebody got by that first initial defender, you guys were going to the rim almost every time. Kawhi was taking a lot of threes, and I think if he had stopped doing that, you could have gotten some more points. But he's always going to drive in. And it was kind of, I noticed a lot, it's like I just said, Nick or Kawhi or even O'Rain, if you get past that first defender and go towards the rack, you're going to pull the rest of the team towards you, or you're going to put a layup in, somebody's going to be wide open. And I think that's what ended up happening for a lot of the Crooks plays, is that they drove in, they found the open guy, or they made the layup. And I think your team chemistry and just ball movement in general is one of the best I've seen from these Crooks teams.
Well, thanks. And the one thing I will say is the pace is one thing I said to Gian earlier today. Like, it's one of the fastest. It brings it back to, it's got to be 2021. That other Crooks team, like with Brett Cody and with Spence Freeman and with some of those guys, Taj Eddington, where the pace was there. And you're able to get stops, and not just get a stop and be like, cool, we have the ball back, but turn it into 2 points where now the other team is kind of having to worry about that end as well and getting back. We're going to go to Jess quickly, but the matchups, I think, and this gets erased, obviously, with a Kareem Cooper there, but he won't be this season, which is unfortunate. But even Shaq Ardrey and Kevin Views, some of the matchups are different, right? And I think one of the things that was tricky is the halfway crooks, and the Road Dogs said this themselves, so I'm not breaking news, don't really have a big guy. They have guys who can protect the rim, which is important, but don't really have a guy who plays like a big guy. And I said back to some of them, to like Joe Sek and Ant Lyons, like in past seasons, teams had big guys where, like, if you didn't have a big guy who played big and was big, you were going to get killed. And no team, there are guys that like that, but no team really has someone who's going to punish you the way it was in past seasons with that. Having a big guy who can take advantage of that offensively. And so that's a great timing for a halfway crooks team like this, where, again, they have the rim protection, but we're able to take advantage of some of those mismatches where, all right, who is Aidan Viveros going to guard? And it was David DePina, and he just kind of would go by him, right? Which is the hard part, and there was no help there. But those matchups all change with the Shaq Ardrey back, with the Kevin Views back, and kind of shifts, right? We talk about that all the time. When you have some of those guys there, now this person isn't guarding this person, person A, he's guarding person B, and it adjusts everybody's matchup, and everyone kind of falls in line. And so if we get that matchup again, I think it'll be different. Because some of those matchups will be different. But Jess, talk more about the halfway crooks. This is great. We're almost going to do a second pod after a game like that for the halfway crooks. We're going to run it back and do more crooks. But no, they are now in, and we'll talk about the playoff seeding in a second, but they kind of are in control now for that 2 seed in the playoffs. How'd the halfway crooks do it?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before. The Halfway Crooks are just a very well-crafted team. Like you said, like, they really are, honestly. You guys have every player that you got. You got Kavi with the threes, and you got Nick. I mean, dare I say Nick Lemoyne, X Factor. We used that word the other day. But, like, just getting in there, you have, like, every single position is filled on that team. So I feel like they're making their way up towards to what the Skyhawks are getting their groove as, so it's just just a well-crafted team, what can I say? But Road Dogs, I do agree with you. I think they struggled with their energy, especially in the fourth. You could really see the players' frustration with the refs, with themselves. It was just kind of getting to them. But Ethan Austin leading the team, he's not the tallest or the biggest player on the team, but he was always going to the basket, getting up there, getting rebounds, so he was playing aggressive and hard majority of the time. But yeah, their team struggled with their rotation that they did so well, I think, in the previous week. And the Halfway Crooks just have this consistent energy and rotation, and they're able, even the games that like the harder matches for them, they're always close games, or they're getting above there. So it's going to be a team to beat for the future.
Well, it's good timing that the Skyhawks and Halfway Crooks meet again, right? Both those teams playing really well. It'll be a fun second matchup, and it's a well-timed second matchup. Lastly, credit to the Road Dogs. Despite all of that, everything we kind of talked about going against them this week, they never let it get out of hand early when it easily could have, right? And that's a credit to them. It was always, like we talked about, 10, 12, 15. They would get it back to 9 or 8 and make some plays. And so that's who they are as a team, and that's a credit to them. And it was a lot of those offensive rebounds, too. I mentioned it at halftime. I was like, guys, they have, again, 10 points on, just Ethan getting in there like you talked about and getting a second opportunity. Some of them getting those second chances because we just weren't grabbing the ball. And they were taking advantage of that. So I think that kind of is one of the things that changed as the game went on. They had less second chances, and you can kind of see it turn against them. But the Halfway Crooks now 5-1 and hold the tiebreaker over the Road Dogs. So if they win one of their next 2 games, they'll be the 2 seed. If they beat the Skyhawks, just quickly before we get to kind of the other 2 matchups, if they defeat the Skyhawks in Week 7 and then win in Week 8, both the Skyhawks and Crooks would have 1 loss, and it would come down to a point differential over the entire season. So I think the Skyhawks may still have that, but it'll be... I didn't do the math yet. I'll do the math for next week. So we'll see if we even need it, because if the Skyhawks win in Week 7, they are the 1 seed regardless of what happens in Week 8, and that would almost leave the Crooks kind of, with their max of 2. For the Road Dogs, they would need some help. They would need to win out, and at least they would need 2 Halfway Crooks losses. So the Road Dogs are almost kind of in that 3 spot. They get a game with Lob City, right? So if Lob City can beat them in Week 7, that would be 2 wins for Lob City over the Road Dogs, I'm pretty sure, right? No, the Road Dogs beat Lob City. I'm spazzing out over here. Let's see. You guys can jump in a second. Where's the other matchup that they had? Road Dogs, Lob City. Road Dogs won. Okay, cool. Sorry. So if Lob City was to win, they would be in a similar situation with the same record, and having split, it would most likely be a point differential for them as well. So a lot on the line, where Lob City currently at that 4 or 5 range can still get up to 3. Both of those teams control their own destiny for the 3 seed at least, Lob City and the Road Dogs. And there's the Air Mambas really quick, we're going to get to next, also at 3-3. And so if some of these teams beat each other up after the Air Mambas defeat Rags in Week 6, the Air Mambas get, where am I? The RI Warriors in Week 7, a good rematch for them, and then the Halfway Crooks in Week 8. So if they can pull some stuff, they can kind of make a mess of that top 4 we've been talking about and get into the top 4. They did, and here we go. Lastly, before we get to these last 2 games, the Air Mambas lost that heartbreaker to Lob City. And so if they finish with the same record as Lob City, which currently they have the same record, Lob City would have the advantage, right? And so like I talked about, it's probably going to come into play if those teams finish with the same record. It would be advantage for Lob City. All right, let's kind of get to the other 4 teams that are all kind of fighting in the standings and what they did in Week 6. We'll start first with the team we just talked about. The Air Mambas defeat Rags 84-70. I thought the Air Mambas started off really hot and then kind of were able to just hold on and build on that lead a little bit in the 4th. But a close game throughout again. Really an even second and third quarter. I just thought they started better. Chris Vincenzo with 20 and 6. Keon Lawrence with 17 and 7 and was doing a lot down low. Mario Valerio with 16 as well. Same with Steve Simone, 16. Let's just finish it off. The last scorer, Chris Faig with 15. For Rags, Josh Perry was back. 32 points, 10 rebounds. I was getting excited. I'll do it, and then we'll go to Jess first. There was moments in that end of the 3rd, early 4th quarter. I was like, it's on. Here comes Josh Perry, and he tried. Just not enough. And again, credit to the Air Mambas, right, to make some plays on the other end where it was, not the easiest thing to kind of complete the comeback that Josh Perry had in mind. But he was making some shots and was trying to take over early in that fourth. Aidan, if I said Jess is going first, I lied. In this one, Air Mambas 3-3. They have a matchup next week with the RI Warriors again, so they could be 4-3 if things go the way that they want it to go. The Lob City can be also 4-3, or if Lob City loses, that would be how that 4 seed opens up, right? So still in play for the Air Mambas. Rags 2-4 would need a little more help. So it's really the Air Mambas. The 4-5 may not matter too much, and that's kind of the because they play each other, right? The 4 would play the 5. So that's probably what we're talking about being the difference. But if crazier things have happened, right? I guess you don't want to be that 6 seed in this scenario if you're the Air Mambas. So what'd they do to kind of control their own destiny a little bit, Aidan, and get back to 3-3?
So like you said, it was an even game throughout. It was the first quarter, the Mambas outscored the Rags by 8, and then it was kind of just gone from there. They were even throughout. And then the fourth quarter, Mambas took over a little bit. But like I said, I was talking to Ramsey before, or even earlier, and I think that maybe I wasn't Mario, it was somebody. But I think that this is one of their best teams that I've seen them have. And they're kind of, like, they only played 5 guys. Well, 6 guys, Ramsey and Jacob Sandsey came in. So they played 7 guys, but they had a core 5-man rotation. And I think that's really what's helping them. Now, not often will Mario shoot 2 of 9 from 3. I know he was a little probably upset about that. But when you have Chris Vincenzo, he's just like a spark plug out there. I know they use that term in football a lot, but it's kind of, he gives you that energy. He's going to drive into the basket 9 times out of 10. He's either going to score, dish it out, or get fouled. Same thing with Chris Faig. Chris Faig is a great 3-point shooter as well, and he can also drive in. And I think that creates a lot of opportunities to where that, like, same thing I said about your game. You know, they get past that first defender. Somebody gets pulled in, there's somebody wide open. And I'm almost positive that Steve Simone was wide open.
We can say it now because especially in the playoffs, they're going to need it. The Rags go as Josh Perry goes, right? And it's not a diss against anybody else. It's just his play style and his able to facilitate, and he elevates the level of everyone else on that team as he would regardless of who else would be on his team, right? Again, it has nothing to do with who else is on his team as much as I think one of the words that people have been using is he's a magnifier, right? And I like that almost better than like some of the other terms that we throw around, because he makes everyone else better on his team, and he brings out the better parts in everyone else, where that goes for a lot of players in this league, right? A lot of people would like to have someone like Josh Perry setting him up. Just talking about Rags a little bit, I'll put you on the spot because they now get the Gold Rush in Week 7, and then they close with the Road Dogs, which they, so we've seen kind of different versions of this Rags team, right? No Josh Perry against the Halfway Crooks. We know how that went last week. They were up, we talked about it. I think it was Week 2 or Week 3 against Lob City. They were up almost double digits in the third quarter. That's our token. If you had the over of talking about that game, this week again, there you go. We talk about it every week, but that was a situation they were in, right? They were right there. And so they can easily win out and kind of shake some stuff up, and that would mean a win over the Road Dogs. But what does Rags have to do better than they did this week to make that happen and build some momentum as we get ready for the playoffs?
Yeah, having Josh Perry, I feel like, is not to just keep, gassing him up, but, I mean, he deserves it. He deserves all of it. He's just a great player. I think that the team, having him kind of in charge and, setting up more of a team environment, because, like you said, it's unfortunate that it kind of relies on him, because in his play, this past game, he got 32 points. He came back. I was going to bring up, too, how he doesn't usually start, but they start with a slower pace, and he's usually the one to pick up the slack. So I feel like in the future, for the games coming up, I feel like their team has to learn how to get more players, being as aggressive as he is, while he is also upping his drive in this game. So getting the players to kind of morph together a little bit more, play more together as a team than just kind of relying on Josh Perry, but not relying more of working together as a group. I think that would help them do really well, and I could see them doing really well next week and using that game as a way for them to kind of get a good groove for the Road Dogs following that.
For sure. We might have lost Aidan, but he should be coming back. So I'm texting him over here. But yeah, and so, we kind of talked about who Rags gets, and we talked about who the Mambas get. Let's get to, we might have 2 Aidans. This is awesome. Let's get to that last game, and we'll see what's going on over there, which closed out week 6 between RI Warriors, I think he's back, RI Warriors and Gold Rush. It was a loaded night, and it ended with a 21-point win for the RI Warriors, their first win on the season. And so they let us know about the power rankings after this one. They let us know about who they picked after this one. That's kind of what I was talking about early. Again, direct all the good stuff to me. I appreciate it. And all the bad stuff to Jess, okay? You can. She's the one making the wrong picks. But it is the RI Warriors, led by Kevin Veter. He's back 29-9, 22 for Brendan Kakela and 7 rebounds for him, and Henry with 20. I told Henry before, I was like, hey, I need 30 out of you tonight. Well, 20's pretty good for Henry. We'll take that. And that was kind of Henry having his handprint all over this game on both ends of the floor for the RI Warriors. Gold Rush, Brandon Taylor, 7-3, 7-12. Listen, he could shoot it, man. And so he gets hot at some points, and it's like, oh boy. But just kind of not enough sometimes as well as a team. Kyle Wolf with 19, John Toby with 16. 11-22 from 3. They probably got to get that percentage up, right? 32 rebounds to 36. They were kind of right there. Jess, how did this one get away from Gold Rush? What happened and allowed this to kind of be such a wide margin?
Yeah, so like you brought up, I could tell the RI Warriors, they were a little frustrated with our picks, but hey, I gave them the fire and motivation that they needed. They had Kevin just dominating the court. And I don't want to pronounce his name wrong, but it's Bazal Majud, I think. He's newer, I think. I haven't seen his face, but, getting like more team, obviously looking to the previous week only having 3 players, that's going to affect our predictions but when you do have a full RI Warriors team, like, they're there to play. They can go. So having that newer player, he was getting a bunch of rebounds, getting the team, really taking over in the second half and just kind of like dominating. And Gold Rush, they were missing Tyler McNeil, who's one of their bigger players, getting their rebounds. Brandon Taylor, I swear, like you would have thought that he hit like 23s. Every time he was lining up, it was just perfect. And, Gold Rush is still, I think they're still getting the groove, but they're improving every single week. So, they're getting a lot better working together as a team. But the RI Warriors, they wanted that win, and you could see that they were, like, hungry for their first win. So it was exciting to see.
I say it all the time, no matter, and I mean, Cody agrees to a degree because Lob City has won so much, but it's not easy to win in this league. It doesn't matter. Sure, there's certain matchups where it may feel easier than others, but teams hang around. It's not easy to win in this league, and so a win's a win, especially for the RI Warriors in this one. They took advantage. Aidan, anything to add on this one before we make some picks and get out?
I'm going to say, I think the RI Warriors took what we said to heart. They took that ranking to heart. They took what happened last week to heart. Brandon's going to talk every single game. He was a little quieter this game, but he was letting it be known. I like the way they played. This isn't the Warriors of the past where it was kind of shoot, 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 shoot. They're driving in a little bit more. Paul Furtado was back. He wasn't there last week. I think he's also a key piece for them because, 14 points, 6-12 from shooting, that's pretty good efficiency. He's able to create some plays and give some energy, and Kevin was back. And like you said, he's kind of their go-to guy. Henry's the captain. Henry's always going to be there. But Henry scoring 20 is very big for the Warriors. And I think they wanted this win more than Gold Rush did, and I feel like that's a common occurrence with Gold Rush because they were the free agent team. They're still getting to know each other, and through 6 weeks they should have a pretty basic need down. But like Jess said, no Tyler McNeil, their bigger player. He can kind of create plays. He's a little bit more vocal, but the RI Warriors just they wanted it more, and they were letting it be known that they wanted this win.
And so, they escape Week 6 with the win, the RI Warriors do, and they get in Week 7 the Air Mambas like we talked about, and it's Gold Rush and Rags. I believe all these teams are playing for the second time. So, yes, I think this is the rivalry week, as we call it, where every team is playing a team a second time. Let's get to Week 7 and make some picks. It's going to be a one-word game. We got to get in and get out. You're going to make your pick and give one word as to why. And our one-word game is presented by Initial Response Restoration. All right, our first game for Week 7, Rags and Gold Rush. Aidan's on the spot first. Who do you have winning and your one word?
Rags. It's not a word, it's a name. Josh Perry.
Okay, you got to say it quickly, right? Jess, who you got?
Also have Rags. I guess my word is reliable.
All right. And you get to figure out what that means on your own time, and then you can ask them in person next week. Next up in Week 7 at 7:30, Halfway Crooks and Skyhawks, the rematch. We talked about it, a close game into the final minutes, and it was the Skyhawks getting the win. I should also mention it was Rags getting the win the last time the Gold Rush and Rags played. All right, Halfway Crooks, Skyhawks. Jess first, who you got, and your one word.
Don't hate me, Skyhawks. My word is aggressive.
All right, Aidan.
Also going to pick the Skyhawks because I don't want them to be angry at me for saying Jalen was better than Omar. My one word for this, I know I spoke a lot, but my one word for this game is Omar.
All right. Well, if that isn't motivation, and so we call Nick Lemoyne an X Factor, that'll piss him off. I can't wait for that. And you both picked the Skyhawks. All right, great. It's going to be great. It's going to be a good Week 7. It'll be a fun game. It should feel like a playoff game again. You know what else will feel like a playoff game? Lob City and the Road Dogs. So both of those teams, the Road Dogs coming off what happened to them against the Halfway Crooks and just not having their full team, and Lob City having their full team. We'll see. I think the over-under is still at 4.5 guys for Lob City, and it's close. It's even money. We don't know how many guys are going to show up. But Aidan, Lob City and the Road Dogs, who you got?
Lob City. I can't think of a whole team, maybe. I can't think of anything.
There's so many different ways you can go. Jess, all right, who you got?
I'm going to go with the Road Dogs. I really want to explain, but I can't. But I did it once, I'll do it again. My word's determined.
All right, no, go ahead. One sentence. Why?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it was like they did. I'm pretty sure it was Lob City where nobody bet on them to win. I did, and they did win. So I have faith in them. I know they'll do it again. Coming off of this past week, I know they're more determined and motivated, so I could see them getting a win, especially if Lob City doesn't have that full team.
All right, I love it. There are so many words you can go with, like game breakers, as in like, Gian and Hachi's former team. Gian, ankles, right? There's so many words you can do for Lob City. And Aidan, butchers the game. It's like it's his first time doing this. It's okay. We talked about it. It was the Road Dogs getting the win. So we'll see if Lob City can flip the script the second time those teams play. Lastly, Week 7 at 9:30, the RI Warriors and Air Mambas. We expected fireworks last time. We got some duds. Maybe fireworks again this time, especially with the RI Warriors coming off a win and the Air Mambas kind of seeing some of their potential here as a team. Jess, your one word, and, who you got, and your one word.
Gonna go Air Mambas, and my word's gonna be focused.
Okay, one for the Air Mambas. Aidan, who you got?
Also going to go with the Air Mambas, consistency.
Well, if history is going to repeat itself, it was the Air Mambas 85, the RI Warriors 43 in Week 4, which not too long ago, the last time these two teams played. Anything else anyone wants to get in trouble for before we get out of here? Because plenty of ammo for a lot of teams. I think we're good. Anybody?
I gotta say, I did want to pick the Halfway Crooks because Nick, I don't want you to be mad at me because I do think Nick is gonna be really, really good. And also, I didn't want the Road Dogs to be mad at me. I know you got this.
All right, so she's torn. But that's even worse than just picking the Road Dogs. What you did there is to qualify and to try to... No. You're an enemy. It's okay. It's all right. Go be with the Road Dogs. It's all good. And then, we'll see. We'll see who shows up for a lot of these teams, obviously, right? The Road Dogs would love to have their full team next week. Lob City would love a repeat performance to have some bench players, I'm sure. But by the looks of it, it looks like Gian is even though he's not full, at full strength yet, will be there, right? And so that's just another person to kind of add to some of that depth that Lob City, needs, right? With some of these players, and Cody not being 100%, Hachi's always freaking ready to go, and Almar too. Like, you kind of know what you're getting from them. It'll be fun. I'm excited for Week 7. 2 games left. We talked a lot about the standings. I think lastly, with the Air Mambas win over Rags, kind of the last thing I forgot to talk about, they just won in Week 6. That gives them a 2-game lead over Rags, right? So kind of Rags is now, unless some things really go crazy and unexpected, Rags are the 6 seed, right? And so now is it going to be the Road Dogs playing them as the 3-6? Is it going to be the, Lob City getting up to the 3 seed and playing Rags? And so you kind of want to be in that 4-5. Just it's a closer team in the standings to you rather than 3-6. And I think Rags, because of how some of these games have gone, is almost certainly, again, things go crazy. We can't predict that, but are almost certainly in that 6 spot. The RI Warriors would be 7 and Gold Rush would be 8. And so that kind of leaves the middle a little. But things are starting to, for a season that's been pretty predictable, we'll see. And I think the question next week will be, which team can break into that top 4, because I think there is still that divide and there's still some matchups left. We'll see what happens, but it's still looking like we're kind of leading towards, and we've seen this, Aidan, how many seasons have we seen kind of the divide at 4, or even when there's more teams, 8 teams, but a lot of times these are the best 4 teams, and we usually get those 4 in the semis, which sets up for a really fun semifinal. Not as fun for the other 4 teams that aren't in that top 4, right? And so, who can break into that and pull off an upset, which has happened as well, we'll see. And that's kind of what we're playing for in Week 7, and especially Week 8, the last week of the regular season. Playoffs are almost here. This is it. It's coming down to the wire. We'll have awards. We're going to be doing some voting for Rookie of the Year, MVP, Offensive Player of the Year. So all of those are a lot of fun. All-star votes. Dunk contests, participants you want to vote in, 3-point contest. So Jess hasn't voted before. She's voting. They're all going to vote, but Aidan, has seen the ballot and knows the deal. But we have it all spelled out, all of our end-of-season awards. So you get to get thinking. And just to put it out there lastly, the Skyhawks have already put into the ether, Jalen Benson for Defensive Player of the Year just because of all his steals. And so I said a lot of times, if you say it enough, it just somehow comes true. And so they've been walking around just saying it to no one. Jalen Benson, Defensive Player of the Year. If you just put it out there enough, it's in people's minds when they're voting. But no, we make sure there's no collusion by the damn Skyhawks, okay? There's none of that going on by the undefeated Skyhawks. Guys, good job. Was it a clean sweep on picks? I think you all picked this. All right. You all picked the same teams, I think.
Except I think he picked Lob and I picked Road Dogs.
Good, all right.
But I knew we were going to differ on that, so all the other ones the same.
Teams.
Good.
Always, because he's got his can't vote against Lob, and I feel like I can't vote against Road Dogs. So we'll see. We'll see.
We've been burned too many times, and this season has proven it a little bit to be not as true. But we're getting to the point of the year where you don't bet against Lob, and so we'll see. We'll see. That's why the playoffs are so fun. Guys, good job. A long enough show for damn sure, almost an hour. A lot to talk about. That's what happens when a team goes in double overtime. For Aidan, Jess, I'm Joey. Week 6 in the books. 2 weeks left. Playoffs coming. We'll see you next week on the Postgame Show.